Hey y'all, I'm Emily, an almost lifelong quilter with a lot of stories to tell. I have loved quilts and talking about them for as long as I can remember, and I'm here to celebrate the tradition of quilting with you. Join me every other week to get back to your quilting roots. We'll celebrate quilts and the real people who made them, learn a little bit about the history of quilting, and have lots of fun exploring ways to reclaim tradition in a modern world. I'm so glad you're joining me this week here at Patchwork Revival. Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 6 of Patchwork Revival. Today is part 1 of a 2-part episode that features a mother-daughter duo who are a perfect representation of what it looks like to take a love of quilting and steward it and pass it down to future generations. Judi Jaksa and Ann Skaehill are some very special women, and I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Part 1 this week features Judi, who is my dear friend Ann's mother, and who is the woman who taught Ann how to sew, although it was a little later than she expected. Judi and I discussed many photographic subjects during this conversation, and I'm mentioning this because you may be interested in checking out the show notes where those photos are featured, so that you can follow during the episode. Either way, sit back and relax and enjoy hearing Judi's story. We have a few appearances by Ann, who got to sit and enjoy hearing her mom's story and even contribute a little bit. Enjoy! I would really like to hear from both of you, where you are, where you came from, all those sorts of things. So Judi, would you like to start for us?
I was born in Evansville, Indiana, which is in the very southern part on almost to the Ohio River. And I lived there my entire life. And I'm the oldest of 7 kids. And, well, when I was younger, I'd play baseball with the boys and, do all the boy stuff. And then my grandmother worked in a shop where she did alterations. And so I guess she taught my mom how to sew, because my mom sewed everything for us. I mean, it was, when I went off to college, she had this list of, okay, we're going to make this, 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 and this. And I was in Girl Scouts for many years. And for the Girl Scout patch, we had to make something, and I can't remember what it was now. But that was kind of my first step into the sewing world. And then when I was, I think I was in high school or maybe in early college, my parents and family went off on a family vacation, and I was at home by myself, and I thought, I'm going to make myself a dress. So I picked out this straight line dress with no sleeves, no collar. I thought, this is going to be just a snap. And it had a zipper in the back. And I got it all sewn together, and I tried to put it on. I had the zipper on the inside of the dress. I was crushed. But that was my first sewing project. And then when I got married, and we moved from Indiana to Iowa, I went out to buy a dress. And I thought, these prices are expensive. We can't afford this. We're just a newly married couple with a very small income. So I talked my husband into letting me buy a sewing machine. So I just bought a basic straight stitch zigzag sewing machine and made my own clothes. And then as we started getting daughters, I have 3 daughters, I would make clothes for them. And if they wanted to go buy something in the store, the quote was, "We can make it for half the price." So it's ingrained in Ann's brain. So it's I did sewing all through the years when the girls were growing up, and I started taking in sewing in alterations just to make a little bit of money on the side, and that was fun too, because I would get. Someone would want a jumpsuit. Somebody brought in a fur coat, wanted me to shorten the sleeves. I've never done anything, but I jumped right into it and did it. So it just, I just kind of started from there. And then my mom got on the computer And she kept talking about, well, I'm doing embroidery designs and I send them from my computer to the sewing machine. Okay, so we visited her once, and so my husband, who's the tech guy at our house, he tried to help my mom figure out what the problem was and get it resolved. So I kept looking at what she was doing. So I came home and decided I'm going to check into this. So then I got into the machine embroidery world, and I would try and buy designs. I didn't like the way they looked because they were too thin, or the density was off, or it was the wrong shape. So I think it was 1997, I decided that I would try digitizing and create my own designs. So from there, in 2000, when I retired from my business job, I created my website, which was customdigitizer.com. And for 24 years, I created embroidery designs, and people could put them on quilts, or I would sell the design to someone who could embroider. And then my mom passed away. Well, before she passed away, let's step back. We were talking on the phone, and she said, I need some help to finish this quilt for your nephew. And I said, oh, okay. All right. So I had made plans to go and fly to Arizona and be with her, and then she passed away. So I never got a chance to stitch with her. Mm-hmm. But then my brothers and my sister said, okay, you're in charge of going through her sewing room. So I went to Arizona for a week and went through, the room was filled with boxes of quilt kits. The fabric was all there, and some of the quilt tops had been started, some hadn't been started at all. I was just overwhelmed. So I kept anything that she had, what I call touched, where she had gone in and worked on. And all of the others, I got in touch with the quilting guild in Evansville and said, I've got these kits of Marilyn's. Would you like them? Oh, we love Marilyn's quilts. She buys the most expensive fabric. See, it would be wonderful. So I boxed up, I don't know how many quilt kits. This is talking big money on this stuff, and sent them to Evansville, and then they would make them and sell them for raffles for the church. Oh, wow. So we had a truck come, but we were filling up in Arizona to bring back to Texas. So I filled up many boxes of embroidery thread, sewing thread, needles, stabilizer, you name it, batting, and any quilt kit that I wanted to bring back. So the first one that I made was from my nephew. I had never made a quilt before. I just went on YouTube, or I think I bought a couple quilting books and learned the steps. So what do you do? How do you make a quilt? And my mom had cut these long strips for this quilt and to get them ready. And she had found a pattern in a magazine or something. And so for my very first quilt, and that's the first picture in the group of my middle daughter Liz and I went to her house, and we spent a day of just trying to figure out, all right, so because it was made on the diagonal, and you can see in the picture the colors go at a diagonal, so the quilt was made on a diagonal on top of that. The two of us spent a day putting that quilt top together, but by the end of the day we had it completed. And then I took it back, and I figured out the batting, and I took it to some other lady who professionally quilted it. So that was my very first quilt.
So it was a trial by fire, figure it out kind of thing.
It was.
Do you remember what sewing machine you had that you finished it on?
I have always had a FOF, and it might have been, I don't know how many. I've been through so many FOFs that, but this was in Texas. My husband's talking from the other room and giving me tips. This was, I think it was a basic embroidery machine with a 4-inch hoop, but it had a lot of sewing features on it, and it had what I call the IDT, where the plastic comes down in the back, so that way you don't need a walking foot. You can, make your stitches nice and even. So I think I had that one at the time.
So I sew on a FAF, but I'm from Texas, born and raised, so I call it a FAF, not a FOF, But I love that machine, and that IDT feature is great.
It is.
It's great. So you were charged with going through all of your mom's sewing room. Is that because you were the only sister who sewed in any way?
Yes, I was the only of the 7 of us. Well, I can't say that. That's not true. I had a sister that was 7 years younger than I am, and she did sew. She liked to sew crafty things and take them to the craft fair. She lived in Indiana, but she had a lot of medical issues and ended up in a nursing home. But she still took her sewing machine with her, and she would say, what do you need? I said, I don't need anything, but I think you need to make it for somebody else. And so she said, I have this quilt. I can't finish it because I don't have a big enough area. Will you finish it for me? So she sent it to me, and the quilt top was a trapezoid. It was not a rectangle. So I had to take it all apart and try and make it even. And I mean, it wasn't perfect, but I got it put together, sent it back to her, and she loved it. So it's like, oh, but she's the only sister that I have that sews.
Okay. So do you remember how many quilts that you finished at that point? Your mother's sewing stash or her room? Did you finish many of those, or did you mostly sell all the kits and stuff?
Well, the next one, I was going through breast cancer, and I got an email from my brother Michael, who had helped my parents while they were in Arizona, and he said, would you finish my quilt that Mom started? I took it out of the apartment when she died just so that it wouldn't get lost. I thought, oh no, there's one more. So I said, okay, just send it to me. And so I got this box. I opened it up. Huge plastic bag of 4-inch squares of fabric in all different colors. I thought, oh my gosh. And this was, I've forgotten what's the term, Ann, where you use the paper and you do it backwards.
Foundation paper piecing.
Yes, paper piecing. I've never done paper piecing. So I decided to sign up for a class that was up in McKinney, and that's about a 30-minute drive from here. So I went up there, took one class. We got through the class, and then I showed the teacher my pattern of what I was going to try and make. And she goes, oh, what I've taught you today won't work. You have to copy and flip over all your pattern pieces so it will work. So she graciously took all my pattern pieces, recopied them for me, and then I came home and traced them and cut them out, whatever, so that I could make this colorful leaf quilt of, I don't know, there's got to be 100 different fabrics in there, because each 6-inch square had a leaf in it had at least let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 pieces of fabric in it. And then you sew all those pieces together to make the quilt. And that really helped me during my time of going through, I had radiation. So I had radiation for a week, and then after that, it was just something to do, to come up in my sewing room, to focus. I mean, I really had to focus on this paper piecing. And I got working on it, and then I got stuck. So then I had to go sign up for a second class, took it again, and she says, I've met you before. I want you to work on your own quilt today. I said, thank you. So I got, I don't know how many hours of help that day, came home, and then was able to complete the quilt. So I have learned to read books, take classes, and get help from anyone who quilts to get my projects done.
Anyone ever asked you for help?
Well, Ann has. When I was going through this very first quilt, she decided that she would make a quilt. She wanted just to do the 9 patch, I can't remember how big your squares were, but they were large enough squares, and to make, 6 by 4 or something like that quilt. So when she brought it to me, I said, first of all, your stitches are wrong. Second of all, you need to make sure your squares are square, and that way your quilt will come out correctly. So Ann's first attempt was a little wonky, but she corrected all her steps and then went on from there. So
it's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is. It's very amazing. It's very amazing because when Ann was younger, I would say, 5 or 6, I taught her older 2 sisters how to sew, and we were going on a family vacation, and I said, I need help to make all these shorts that you want to wear. So I got the 2 of them at the sewing machine, and one would cut, one would sew, and Liz and Jean did a really good job, and they were so proud of themselves. They each had 5 pairs of shorts to wear on vacation, but Ann was not interested. She was, running around with her friends. She was the tomboy of the 3 girls and liked to go play in the dirt and play with their friend Molly and, everything else, but no sewing. So I had no hopes for Ann.
As far as sewing went, at least.
As far as sewing, that is.
Oh, man. So do you have any idea, Judi, how many quilts you've made in a lifetime?
I was going through my list, and these are only some of them, because I have made some for customers. Oh, years ago, I was working at the church office, and the secretary lost her husband. And she came to me, and she said, the word is out in the group around the church that you sew. I said, really? So I said, I embroider, but I don't know about sewing things. And she said, I would really like for you to make a quilt from my husband's shirt. So I really thought about it for a couple weeks before I went back and said yes, because that's a big undertaking to cut up someone's family memories into squares. So Ann helped me find a pattern. She had been making a lot of smaller quilts, and Georgia didn't want a really large quilt, but she just wants something that she could wrap around and feel all the warmth from her husband's shirts. So Ann helped me, and we found a quilt pattern where the squares were large enough that we got some good size pieces of the shirts. I think we even took some of the pants that were in there, and then she wanted me to embroider on there. So it was places where they had been. They had lived in so many different states, and she had ideas of small things that we could embroider on the quilt. So I think there was 6 to 8 embroideries on the front of the quilt on top of trying to get the quilt cut to size. So that was my very first customer quilt, going away from all my mom's projects. And it turned out pretty well. I had somebody else quilt it for me because I wanted it to be perfect. And I can't remember. Ann, did you quilt that one? Or okay, I must have taken it to the lady who I had asked before, and Georgia loved it. I had another lady come to me who lost her husband recently, and she said, "Oh, I heard from Georgia you made a quilt for out of her husband's belongings." I said, "Yes, I did." So I said, "Oh yeah, sure, I can do this," because she had 4 children, and she only wanted 40 by 44. I thought I can manage those. That shouldn't be too bad. But then she wanted one for herself too, so that was 5. So she brought over her husband was into car racing. And so he had all of these event shirts and patches and knit shirts that had the logo on one side and the name on the other. So we tried to incorporate all of those. So I brought over a big box, what she had brought me, and then Ann and I sorted for, okay, so we're going to do this for this quilt, we're going to do this layout, and Ann was nice enough to do the layout for me, because by this time Ann's totally into t-shirt quilts. And so I bought 5 bins so I wouldn't get confused, and so I put hers in one, and we made sure we had the right colors in this one and in this one, and they were all different. And I can use a piece of this one for that one. And so I ended up making 5 small quilts for her, and a couple of the areas were a little large because we drew in the name on one side and the logo on the other, so it was pretty wide area fabric. She said, "I have patches. Can you sew on patches?" I said, "Yes, I can." So I had Ann's quilter by this time, had her quilt them all, and then I sewed on all the patches on top of that so that she wouldn't have to quilt around the patches. And those took up all the empty areas. And my customer sent me a picture where it's hanging on the wall in her house. So I don't know what her kids did, but I know that that's what she is doing. So those are the only 2 customers that I have said yes to, and I've turned down others because of their projects are, I don't want to say beyond my ability, but I just didn't want to do it. It was just, I've got other things that I want to do to be involved in. I've made quilts small quilts for my grandchildren over the year, and take their favorite colors and put it together. I know I have 2 grandchildren that each have their own small quilt, and one even got a matching pillow because I had leftover fabric. And then I incorporate the embroidery with it. So I think I sent you a picture of the flag banner. That is all small squares of fabric that I have embroidered on, and then I sewed them all together, and then I quilted over that. And then it was supposed to be a pillow for the instructions, but I thought I need something to hang outside. So then I put something for the back for the rod to go through, and hung a piece of wire around it and hung it on the front porch. So that lasted for I think like 3 4th of Julys, and now it just looks totally faded. Well worn.
Yes. Loved and used.
Yes.
Do you document your quilts? Your projects?
I do at the time, but I try and take pictures of them. I know I've taken pictures of, I made what I called the Christmas quilt kit that I just left on the shelf and didn't want to get to. And the middle daughter, Liz, decided, oh, I'd love to have the Christmas quilt from Granny's. She wanted it a king size instead of a queen size. So there was a lot of playing around with that. Anne had by that time had a felt board hanging in her sewing room. So I took advantage of that and went over there with all my squares that I had, and we laid it all out on the felt board, and we found out I didn't have enough made, so I had to come back home and make some more to fill in. And then I had to make a really large border. I think it was like 6 or 8 inches wide in order to make it 120 inches all the way around the bed. So that one was, I think, more documented than any of the others that I have done. But I try and take pictures, and when I went to look for all of these pictures of these quilts that you asked for, I'm thinking, oh, where are they? I know that I've got pictures. I know I've got quilt pictures here, and I've got quilt pictures of the labels that I put on the back, but where's the picture of the quilt? So it's like I didn't follow through a lot on some of them. So I think the answer to that is no.
I think yes, because even labeling them is a big deal, because now anyone who sees them will know some lady named Judi made this.
Yeah.
If they don't remember you, or if their mother commissioned it for them or something. But also having any kind of picture, I think, is great. And I have really treasured pictures of my grandma's quilts that I sort of ended up with. So I think that you should be commended for that, because you do document it.
Well, I had a little bit of help going on Facebook and looking in my daughter's Facebook pictures of, oh, there's a picture of the 2 granddaughters who had quilts made. So, yeah. But we've always put a label on the back, and I always put, if it's part of my mom's quilt, I put her name on it. And I say, created by Marilyn Voda, and then stitched by Grandma Judi, or Judi Jaksa, or whoever it was going to. So I always make sure that they remember this was part of their grandmother's idea in the first place.
Right. I love that. It makes it a generational project.
Yes.
You have a most treasured quilt or a most special? Do you love them all the same? Because that's okay too.
Yeah, I think I love them all the same. I have a quilt on a bed upstairs that my mother made for me, and so I kind of treasured that one the most. It's kind of upstairs and out of the way, and nobody uses that bedroom, but she was trying to make a quilt for each of her children. And I don't think I was the first one that received the quilt, because I don't remember receiving it right away. But it's been on the bed for as long as I can remember upstairs. And so I decided, she sent me a bag of leftover pieces from the quilt. I thought, what in the heck am I going to do with these? So I made 2 pillow covers that match the quilt. So it kind of added to what she did, because she also made her quilts where there was no border at the top of the bed. It was just on the 3 sides. And so you could always tell how to put the quilt on the bed. And I thought, well, this would be a nice addition to cover the 2 pillows, and I can get rid of more fabric out of the closet.
Yes, that's always a priority. Do you usually feel, for you, if you're quilting or really sewing, is it a solo sport for you, or do you find community that way? How do you feel about that?
Most of it's solo, but there is a picture in there that I added to those pictures called the Judi and Ann quilt square. Ann decided one year that we were going to do some quilt squares together. So and I think you bought the quilt squares, and so I think we got, I don't know if this was the first one or the second one or the third one, whatever it is, but we took a picture of it. And I'm trying to look whose house it is. I think it's at Aunt's house where we were sewing, because we would trade off. She would come to my house and I would go up to her house and work on these quilt squares. I don't think we ever finished all of them. I think
no,
we got halfway
we
through.
Didn't. That was a block of the month, and we had really great intentions that once a month we were going to get together and sew. But then my business got so busy that it made it really hard to figure out when are we going to sew these blocks. So
and my business,
we did not finish that, I think.
Yeah, and my business got busy, so between the two of us, we both got busy. So, yes.
It happens. It happens. Judi, is there any we didn't talk about that you remembered or wanted to share?
I just wanted to let you know that I love embroidery. I love to make the quilts, but I also get into other projects. And one of the other pictures that I gave you is a rope coaster that I belong to an embroidery group, and we're always coming up with different activities. So I make a lot of things, gifts for other people, and if I don't remember to take a picture of it, it's gone. So I made the rope coaster and put Ann's logo on it, her Crafty Moose logo on it, and I made one for a granddaughter who was playing soccer at the time, and so I put a soccer ball on that one. So I've always been into crafts. When we lived in Iowa, I think when Ann was little, I belonged to the Marian Women's Club, it was called, and our group would get together once a month, and of course we would eat first. So Ann always remembered always going to my meetings and getting to eat all the goodies. And those ladies would treat her like royalty. But we would make, crafts with popsicle sticks and, all this kind of stuff. Not too many expensive things. And it was a lot of fun to get together with those ladies and share crafts. Some of them sewed and some of them didn't. So those of us who did, we were picking up a project that needed part of a sewing, we got assigned to do all the sewing for the group and then bring it back, and then everybody else would make it into a ball or whatever that we were making at the time. So I had a lot of fun during those years with that group. And now here in Texas, I'm part of the American Sewing Guild. I never thought I would be a member. My mom was always a member, and I got into a group called EQ Software. It's a software you can create your quilts in the software, and I went to the first meeting for free, and then after that I was hooked because they were helping me with the software, and I didn't know how to use it. So I signed up for American Sewing Guild, and then I saw a list of all the other classes that are happening around in the Metroplex, and another one was embroidery. So, and that one was a lot closer to my house than this other one. So I was still doing the EQ software, and then I got into, it's called Hoopla Sisters. So, we do different projects, and everybody would bring their show and tells, and the quilts some of these ladies would make it would cover the floor, and all kinds of different embroideries on it, or they would put their grandkids' names on it and the date. And other ladies would like to crochet and knit. So I got the bug for crocheting and knitting. So I started up that one on the side. So it's a group that's not only embroidery, but we've done some quilting projects, we've done some embroidery projects, we've done some simple enough where you take a hand towel and cut a 6-inch piece of ribbon, and you make a Christmas tree, and you shape it with the loops of ribbon on I think there was 9 levels, and then sew on a brown one at the bottom for the stem of the tree. So that was a lot of fun too. So, and that was just plain sewing. So it's just I then I got into the prayer shawl group at the church, and knitting. I have a hand trimmer, so I was having trouble with the knitting needles. So I switched to crocheting, and I don't have as much trouble. So I am now making prayer shawls for this group. So besides the sewing and the quilting, I also have all of these other, I don't want to call them talents, but things that I get into and get excited about.
I think you can call them talents.
And I still have 2 quilts left of the quilt tops that my mother started. And when my granddaughter and Ann were over, they were helping me clean out this closet, and we put those in the let's give away bin. But I've decided since then, Ann, changed my mind again, that I'm going to finish those, and I'm going to give them to our church when they have a local auction, because they're always having fundraisers. Because these 2 quilts are in colors that the fabric's got to be 20 years, maybe 30 to 40 years old. I mean, it was a long time ago. And I just don't want them to just go to waste or be thrown in the trash as in pieces. I mean, my mom did start these. She did buy the fabric. She did find a pattern and get it started. But I want to finish it for her. And I'll probably put a label on the back with her name on it when I donate it. But only 2 left.
You're going to do it.
Yeah,
I love that. I think that's
so. Mom, here's a fun connection. So that day that Faith and I help you go through all your fabric, and I was like, ooh, my friend Emily would love this. This is the Emily that's, in fact, the package is on the way to her house with Granny's fabrics.
I see.
So let's make a deal, Judi.
Yes.
When you finish your projects from your mother's fabric, send a picture to me.
Okay.
And when I finish a project using your mother's fabric, I'll send a picture to you.
Oh, thank you. That'll be nice.
I'll do it.
That'll be
someday.
Nice.
I will do it.
I know. That's it. We get all these other things off of our plate, and then we can focus on it. Yes.
I know. I was talking to Ann, though, because I currently sort of packing up my sewing space because we're moving houses, and I found some fabric that is really nice fabric. It's beautiful fabric. It is I brought a long time ago, and I've changed. It's bright and beautiful, just like the quilts that Ann makes. And I was like, I'm going to see if Ann wants this, because I could never let it go till I could rest assured it was going to go to a good home.
Find a home for it, yes.
Yes, and I don't know what it is about having something tangible like that makes you want to nurture it and preserve it and make sure it's going to turn into something really special and important. I don't know. I felt silly, but now that we're talking about it, I think that's what it was.
Yeah. It's nice to give things away. I mean, I've given away a lot of my mother's fabric that I know that I wouldn't. I don't sew clothes anymore. And I've given away a lot of knit fabrics that she had. Oh, there was one in white. She must have had 10 10 yards of it, and it's 60 inches wide. I'm thinking, I don't know what in the heck she was going to do with all that, but I can't use it. So I gave that to American Sewing Guild, who then have fabric sales for the ladies who will come and buy it and use it. And that's where I am with a lot of the things that I have left over. We even have a scrap bin that they put out, and so any of the pieces that are less than a half a yard that we will put in the scrap bin. So I've got bins worth of scraps that I then can give to them when I'm ready. I would recommend that for anyone who sews or quilts or embroiders or whatever, because there's always a group in their area that they can join.
Well, good. You know what I'll do is I'll find their website and then I'll put it show notes.
Okay.
That way people can go look into it if they would like to, because it does sound really great and a great way to find some community. And I'll also put your pictures of everything we talked about in the show notes also, so that people can refer to that if you're okay with that.
I am fine. Yeah, I actually numbered them in order so that I'm into making small gifts. Not large quilts, but small gifts for people because I can get them done quicker. So there's even a picture of a mug rug that I made for my choir members that's in there, and it looks like it was dated 2019, so it was a few years ago. And I see it on the piano. I see it in my choir director's office, so I know they're using them, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. I want them to use them. Oh, I forgot to talk about the parrot quilt. When I go gung-ho, I go gung-ho. I have a friend who we go out to lunch with every other week, and she loves pictures of parrots. So I thought, I'm going to make her something. So I didn't make her a small something. I made her a big something. So the parrot quilt has got 3 parrots on it and 1 branch and a bunch of leaves and looks like 1 flower. And I did a lot of top stitching on that one myself, as I remember, instead of sending it to the quilter, because if I send it to the quilter, she's just going to quilt over all of the pictures of the birds and whatever. It really needed to have the big tall blue parrot needed to have quilting over just that one area. So that was the one that I did myself, and it's got a large border on it, but I even had to go to the copy shop to take the pattern and make it much larger so I could roll it out on my sewing table and put tissue paper on top of it and cut out the pattern pieces from that copy from the copy shop. So it was a very big project, one I will never do again, and I do a lot of those. I will never do this again. But it was a lot of fun to give it to my friend, and I even made her a small version of it for a mug rug so that she could at least, keep that too. But I've made a lot of baby blankets too that are small. And the first one I gave to my husband's old brother, who's a little bit younger than he is. They had their first child. I found out they hung it on the wall. I said, you were supposed to lay it on the floor and let Natalie climb all over it, not hang it on the wall. So it's, there was another picture in there of a baby quilt that I made for Holly, one of my nieces. It's a picture of myself and Holly and Holly's mother. And she sent me a picture of kangaroos. So I digitized the kangaroos and I stitched them on white squares and then put different colors because she didn't know the sex of the baby. So because I took it to a baby shower, and it was, I can see pink and blue and green and yellow squares in there with the pictures of the kangaroos. So we're standing there in that picture admiring the quilt. But it's fun projects like that. I made a quilt, an airplane quilt for, she is my brother's stepdaughter. I guess is that how the connection, and she had a little boy, and my brother's into airplanes, and so I just put the two together, sent her, looks like a card in the picture, and burp cloth with the airplane on it, and then the airplane quilt behind it. And that was a fun quilt to do too, because it was just something different. And I digitized the airplanes and embroidered them and put them on the squares, and then added them with colored blocks. So it's fun to make baby gifts when I find out someone is pregnant. But I've also done a lot of burp cloths too, where I just put a little design on it and the date of when the baby was born and the name. And parents are always grateful for those. So,
but here's what you need to know about my mom in our family. So mom is the one who like holds the key to intentionality. So she makes cards. Do you still do it for everyone? Like all your brothers and sisters, all dad's brothers and sisters, nieces, nephews, like for everyone still?
Yeah. I've cut back
birthday cards.
I've cut back some, but for the most part, yes.
Yeah. So you can, at a certain level in our family, right? Because it's so wide and it's so deep. So down to a certain level, you can expect a birthday card and a phone call on your birthday every single year. And mom is the queen of somebody's about to have a baby, or somebody is celebrating this big anniversary, or let's get together and let's make this, or I'm gonna make that, or whatever. So she is the queen of intentionality in our family.
It's been kind of assigned to me. I'm the oldest, as they call me, number one, and my brothers and my sisters were being silly once when we were all getting together. I probably at my mom's funeral, I think that's where this conversation happened. And they all looked at me and said, "You're the oldest now. You need to be our leader. You need to be the number one." And that's why and they put that number one label on me, and I said, "Okay." Didn't know what I was getting into. But I enjoy making embroidered cards, and it's because when I go to the store, they are very expensive, just like sewing, So I'll just make a bunch of the same design and print the inside, and always they'll all get the same cards, but they're all going to different cities, and nobody will know.
Work smarter,
It does.
not harder.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Yes.
Well, Judi, I appreciate you taking time to share all this with me and with our listeners. I think that sharing our own stories with each other is how we grow and how we learn, and also how we appreciate everybody's different talents and gifts and styles and just where we've all come from. So I'm really grateful that you took the time to sit and chat with me.
Well,
and Ann, she's been listening too.
I am honored that you even asked me. It's been my pleasure to do this. And I also have to say that Ann has grown into the quilting side. I just kind of tag along and say, "Oh, I need a little bit of help here." But she has, the t-shirt quilts that she puts out are fantastic. So
I know.
And now,
I can't get enough of looking at those.
And the patterns now that she's creating, she's gone even a step further. So I kind of went the other way into the embroidery world, and she went into the quilting world. So
Yep.
it it really warms my heart that she is now the next generation of, it's not sewing, but it's quilting. And I know my mother, we called her Granny. Granny would be very pleased to see all the quilts that you have made during your lifetime, Anne. So it's really wonderful to see that, because when they were younger, I thought, our oldest daughter, she doesn't want to even look at a sewing machine. I sent a sewing machine to her house, and it collected dust, and I thought, well, maybe the granddaughters would pick it up at their. No, nobody was interested. But my middle daughter, she's not into quilting, but she's into graphic arts and loves to do pillows and curtains and, projects like that.
There we go. They're
Yeah.
carrying the torch.
Yes.
Well, Anne, is there anything that I didn't ask that you would want to ask your mom while you have her here on this topic?
Well, first, I'm blinking away the mascara in my eyes because that was very sweet of you to say, Mom. That was very kind. I definitely was voted the least likely to sew a stitch ever in our family, ever. I know I can remember, it must have been the trip you were talking about where we all had matching shorts. Did you make them for Julie and Holly too, our cousins?
No, this was just a family trip where we went to Adventureland.
Okay. So there was one summer that we were all there at the same time, and all the girl cousins were wearing the same t-shirt. We had all gotten the same t-shirt somewhere.
Yeah, that was a family reunion in Indianapolis. Okay. Yeah, and we met.
It was before that.
Oh,
it was way
that?
before that. Like I was young.
Oh.
At the family reunion, I think I had Will with me at the yeah, I did. He was a baby at the family reunion. But anyway, I was a kid, and I can remember it was at the Berry Drive house, Granny's Berry Drive house.
Yes.
And I remember you and she working on something in her sewing corner down in that, I would say basement, but it really wasn't a basement. It was a split level house.
Yeah.
But I just remember thinking, like, I don't want anything to do with what's happening over there. And if they make me try something on, it's going to have pins in it and it's going to hurt. And I would much rather go fishing out at the pond in the backyard with Pa.
Yeah.
When you and Granny would get together when we were all so young, what were you guys working on? What were you making?
Oh, good question.
Was it always clothes? Was she a clothes maker?
No, I don't know if it was when Mom was trying to work on embroidery or if we were sewing on one of her projects. My mother had a wonderful sewing teacher in her area, and Jewel would always have sewing classes, and so Mom was always working on heirloom sewing and I'm trying to think. I mean, she made most of her clothes, her own clothes. And so I think it was probably, I was helping her put the hem in something so that she could do that with herself. But I was lucky enough to be invited to go to one of those sewing lessons. And then the word got spread that I created all my own designs. And so they were working on a sewing project where they were embroidering on something, but they needed something that wasn't available. So they needed a digitizer to create it. And so I remember one summer or one trip that I made myself. I drove myself from Texas up to Indiana, and I taught those ladies how to use their computers and trying to help. Oh, there must have been 6 ladies in the room all at once. They all had different questions, and it was a lot of fun. I at least got through the lesson, and they learned enough that they could create something. Whether or not they followed through on that, I will never know. but they were delightful ladies to be around. So many talented quilters. I saw many different quilts that others have made. And I think that's where my mom learned to have a love for quilting, because she had friends that she did it with. And I think that's how she got started, because when I was growing up, she wasn't quilting. She was just making sewing outfits for us or for herself. So I think that group really helped my mom, and that's why I think joining other groups helped, because I know Ann has joined other quilters and has learned things, and so I'm learning things through American Sewing Guild. I really feel like I've got a lot of help for that. And these days, I hate to say it, YouTube has got a lot.
It does. It has everything.
It
really does.
So many different. I am trying to work on a new baby quilt, and it's called Corner to Corner. And I've never done that. And so I had to go on YouTube and learn how to do it, because I bought the pattern before I realized what the stitch was going to be. So it's like these quilt patterns that I've gotten into in the past, like the paper piecing that, I hated paper piecing after that. I will never touch it again. But with all the help that I got from classes and from other friends telling me, you can do it this way, and this is the trick that I use, and make sure you rip your papers this way, and I made it through some of those projects. So that's my recommendation for anyone who's beginning to either get on YouTube or get into some of your local groups to help.
Okay, friends, this is the end of part 1 of this 2-part series. Next episode will feature Judi's daughter, Ann, also known as Crafty Moose Quilts, who will share her quilting story with us. I can't wait. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a rave review. Jump on down to the show notes to find links for this episode, as well as the link to my shop where you can enjoy 15% off as a podcast listener with code REVIVAL, REVIVAL. From family heirlooms to thrift store finds, the Patchwork Revival podcast is here to celebrate the generational connection made in the quilts we love. I'll see you next time.